When even the biggest names in tennis stop what they're doing to watch a 20-year-old rising star, you know something unusual is happening. And at Wimbledon, Alex Eala didn't just win matches. She changed the energy of the entire tournament. Her incredible run finally came to an end against Jasmine Paolini in a tough, emotional 3-set battle. But if you only looked at the final score, you missed the real story. Eala walked off the court with her head held high because from the first point to the last, she showed fight, courage, patience, and the kind of resilience that turns a young player into something much bigger than a headline. Paolini absolutely deserved credit for reaching another Wimbledon quarterfinal. She handled the pressure, stayed steady, and found a way through a dangerous opponent. But even after Paolini moved on, so many fans were still talking about Alex. That alone tells you how powerful this run had become. After Eala's exit, social media lit up with one big question. Did Wimbledon just lose some of its magic? At first, that sounds dramatic. It almost sounds like something fans say when they're emotional after a tough loss. But the reaction was impossible to ignore. Could one young player really change the atmosphere of an entire Grand Slam? Could someone who didn't even reach the final still become one of the defining stories of the tournament? With Alex Eala, the answer started to look like yes. During her post-match press conference, Eala was asked about her serve because Paolini had admitted that the changing pace made it surprisingly hard to read. Alex smiled and gave the kind of answer that explains why people respect her so much. She said she has never been one of the biggest servers on tour, so she has learned to use variety, placement, timing, and smart tactics instead of just relying on raw power. That answer said a lot about her game and even more about her mindset. She knows exactly who she is as a player. She isn't trying to copy somebody else's strengths. She is building her own weapons, using her brain, using her movement, and finding ways to make opponents uncomfortable. That is a level of maturity you don't always see from a player this young. But throughout this tournament, Eala carried herself like someone who already understood the stage. She spoke with confidence. She competed with discipline. And even when the pressure kept growing, she never looked like the moment was too big for her. During her run, Wimbledon started to feel less like a traditional tennis event and more like a celebration for Filipino fans around the world. Philippine flags were everywhere. The cheers followed her from match courts to practice courts. Every time she stepped onto the schedule, the atmosphere felt bigger than expected, almost like championship weekend had arrived early. Fans from all over the world began embracing her style, not just because she was making history, but because she brought something fresh and positive to the sport. One fan said Alex Eala is exactly what tennis needs, and honestly, it was hard to argue with that. She brought emotion without drama, confidence without arrogance, and national pride without making the moment feel closed off to anyone else. Even though her dream run ended in the 4th round, she had already done something historic by becoming the first Filipino player in the Open era to reach that stage of a Grand Slam. Her stunning victory over defending Wimbledon champion Iga Świątek announced her arrival to the entire tennis world. It proved she could not only stand across the net from the very best, but beat them on one of the sport's biggest stages. By the end of her campaign, the conversation was no longer only about the players still chasing the trophy. Countless fans were still talking about the young woman who had already left the draw, yet somehow remained one of Wimbledon's biggest stories. That says everything about how fast Alex Eala's profile has grown. Not long ago, she was seen as a talented junior with huge potential. Now she has become one of the brightest new names in women's tennis, inspiring millions and proving she belongs under the brightest lights in the sport. If this Wimbledon told us anything, it is that Alex Eala's journey is not slowing down. It is just getting started. Even in defeat, she left center court with something more meaningful than ranking points. She left with worldwide respect, global attention, and the pride of an entire nation that had followed every point like history was being written in real time. Across the Philippines, thousands of fans gathered at public viewing events, staying up through the night to watch her historic run. Families, friends, and communities came together around television screens, phones, and watch parties because this was bigger than one player trying to win a tennis match. This was representation. This was belief. This was a nation seeing one of its own break through a barrier that had never been crossed before. One analyst put it perfectly. Alex Eala had made history by becoming the first Filipino player in the Open era to reach the second week of a Grand Slam. But what truly stood out was the size of the reaction around her. Commentators admitted they had rarely seen anything like it. One even said the excitement, attention, and buzz around Eala felt greater than what many world #1 players receive. That kind of support does not come from clever marketing. It cannot be forced by a social media campaign. It happens naturally when people understand they are watching history while it is still unfolding. Every win gave millions of Filipinos another reason to wake up before sunrise, gather with loved ones, pack sports bars, fill community events, and wave the Philippine flag with pride. Wimbledon was thousands of miles away in London, but somehow, whenever Alex played, it felt like a home event for Filipino fans around the world. Inside the All England Club, that energy was impossible to miss. Practice sessions that usually bring in a small group of committed tennis fans suddenly turned into packed scenes, with people lining up simply to watch Eala go through routine drills. Tournament staff, volunteers, and security quickly noticed the pattern. Whenever her name appeared on the schedule, attendance jumped beyond expectations. Speaking about the pressure of competing at the highest level, Eala gave another answer that showed why people connect with her so deeply. She acknowledged that elite athletes always deal with pressure, but then she said she often thinks about ordinary Filipinos, especially her parents who worked tirelessly, sacrificed so much, and provided for their family every single day. Compared with what they had gone through, she said, her own pressure felt easier to carry. That perspective hit home. It made fans respect her even more because it showed that despite the fame, despite the headlines, despite the attention, Alex still understands where she comes from. And the excitement around her was never just about nationality. Tennis experts had been praising her game for months because she is one of the most interesting young players on the WTA Tour. She does not dominate by blasting serves or overpowering opponents with one huge shot. Her game is built differently. She wins with court coverage, intelligent shot selection, anticipation, defense, variety, and a fighting spirit that refuses to give away easy points. Again and again, she chases down balls that look impossible to reach. She extends rallies until opponents are forced to hit one more shot, and very often that one extra shot becomes one extra mistake. That style has made her one of the most entertaining young competitors in women's tennis. Throughout the 2026 season, her improvement became harder and harder to ignore. Every tournament seemed to add another layer to her confidence, her experience, and her belief. Analysts watching her Wimbledon run agreed that this was only the beginning. One described her wins as the foundation of something truly special. Another said that after taking out the defending champion, Eala deserved to be taken seriously as a legitimate title contender. With the draw opening up and her confidence rising, people began asking a question that would have sounded bold not long ago. Is Alex Eala a real threat to win this tournament? By that point, it didn't sound crazy anymore. After establishing herself among the sport's rising stars, Eala had already shown she could go deep in major events, and that her breakthrough performances were not flukes. When Wimbledon began, analysts no longer saw her as just a dangerous underdog who might pull off one upset. They saw a player with the talent, belief, and discipline to challenge the best in women's tennis. Then she went out and backed that up by beating one of the tournament favorites. That victory reshaped the entire conversation around the women's draw. Television coverage that had focused heavily on established champions suddenly shifted toward the smiling young Filipina making history on one of tennis's greatest stages. International media wanted to know her story, her training background, her connection to the Rafa Nadal Academy, and the incredible support she carried from the Philippines to London. Commentators described her run as one of the defining stories of Wimbledon and predicted that fans were watching the birth of a future superstar. They praised her fearless play, her relentless effort, and the incredible atmosphere created by the thousands of fans following her every move. One analyst called her box office, and that felt exactly right. She became the kind of player people make time to watch. Looking back, it is clear that 2026 has been a year of steady growth for Eala, with each tournament adding something important to her development. But maybe the most refreshing part of her rise has been the way she has handled sudden fame.